My presentation today is becoming a web developer later in life. I'll start with a quick introduction of myself. My name is Michael Auteri. I've been using WordPress for probably about a decade or maybe a little more. I've been using it professionally at an enterprise level for about 8 years of that time. I've had a career prior to being a developer. So being a web developer is my second career. I've been in this career for about 11 years, maybe. I do not have a computer science degree. I did initially go to college for computer science, but found that I was not in the right frame of mind at that time to really pursue that degree, and ended up with studying communications as a result of that. Though I did continue to have an interest in programming and computers from an early age and through school and past that. 10,000 hours is the magic number of greatness. This quote was popularized by Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The Outliers. And what this basically means is what Gladwell was saying was that spending 10,000 hours practicing something is the magic number to be exceptional at it. When you think about it, when you're taking out, say, traditional college out of that equation, and as an adult with everything you have to do, especially if you have another career, a family, a spouse, children, your time is very limited. And it's how do you make the most of that time? It's also important to say that that quote, if you've ever read that book, it's to be exceptional at it, so the best of the best. For basically, when you want to start off, when you want to be a developer, you might not need to be the upper echelon of developers or the 10x developer, but be competent, be good, maybe be great. That would take far less time. And a lot of this is how do you spend that time wisely when you have limited amounts of it? So I'm going to kind of take you through a little bit of a story of how I got started and where I think that real first part or push into development was and how that kind of played out for me. So the year was 1999. This was the year I built my first website that I was paid for. And I use paid in quotes because I built a website for a doctor or a building of doctors. And I got paid with a digital camcorder. So in exchange for that website, I got this digital camcorder. And I would say that that was the first site, or that first website that kind of sent me in this direction. I might want to also mention that even prior to that, like let's say back in 1989, I was in 5th grade programming on a Commodore 128. It was a lot of go-to statements. It was very ugly software, but I was also like 10. So in middle school, I also played around with QBasic. Again, not really learning the program so much as like finding programs in books and copying them and changing them around a little bit to see what would happen. In high school, I built crude websites in GeoCities, as many of us, I think, of this age have done. But this was the first website that I got paid for. And at that time, I had a copy of Dreamweaver, and I was really sticking to the WYSIWYG, or the what you see is what you get screen. So I really wasn't touching any code. I was just designing these websites, very table-based layouts, putting stuff through Photoshop, putting them together, these static websites. It was 1999, and people were fine with that sort of thing at that time. So that's kind of where I started. 2001, This is where that 1999 opportunity I had kind of started paying off a little bit. So I was in college and I got a job in computer services. And when I was on the interview, and this is why it's important, if there's something that you've done or you're interested in, tell people. So when I was on the interview, I told the guy that was interviewing me, why I would be qualified to put, paper and printers was, I built a website once and I showed it to him. And I got the job, minimum wage job of putting paper and printers and helping some students with, normal applications that they struggle with in computer labs. About a week or a few days after I got hired, he called me in his office and asked to see that website again. And I showed it to him and he was clicking through it. And he asked me, he's like, I have a small business on the side where I do some like computer networking and such. He's like, some of those clients are looking for websites. Would you like to work for me to do some of those websites? So me just simply bringing up that 1999 website to him ended up with him wanting to hire me to do these websites for his company. So again, I would continue to do these Dreamweaver websites for him and everything was fine. 2002, I graduated from college. The economy was in not very good shape. It was right after the dot-com bust and jobs were scarce, especially for people right out of college. I did look at some web design jobs, but deemed myself unqualified, basically because I was still just really building Dreamweaver websites and, touching code a little bit, but kind of like how I was touching code a little bit when I was playing with QBasic or when I was playing with BASIC on my Commodore when I was a kid. I wasn't really learning a lot of that stuff. I was basically sticking to the what you see, what you get screen. Again, I had a degree, as I mentioned, in communications and a minor in literature. So I found a job as a junior copywriter proofreader, which fit those degrees pretty well for a local mail order company. To supplement the income a bit, I did still continue to do those Dreamweaver websites for the person I worked for at college. 2006 was a real turning point because at that time I was still building those Dreamweaver websites, but now and I had quite a few clients that I was doing these sites for, but they're asking for more and more difficult things that I wasn't able to do because I just kind of knew how to use Dreamweaver and I got pretty good at how that worked, but I still didn't touch code too much. I was, and I still wanted to, I was still kind of reliant on that bit of income coming in. So this was kind of the time I decided I should probably learn how to actually code. As I mentioned, I was a computer science major, and I kind of didn't do great there. So I was a little hesitant to learn how to code because I had a little bit of a tough time with it when I was in college. I was also generally sick of being a copywriter, to be honest, and I was pretty unsatisfied with my job. Because since I was at the end of 2006, between 2007 and 2009, I started pursuing and taking some online courses. At my actual full-time job, I had taken a digital photography course online that my company paid for. And I really liked that structure. I liked how online courses functioned. And I felt like I was learning a lot from that sort of format. So I noticed that Passaic County Community College had a couple of web courses. They had one on Dreamweaver, which I thought would be handy since I was still using that program. They had one on Photoshop, which I found very useful because I did a lot of photo manipulation and image manipulation for websites. And they had a course on CSS, and I think it was CSS and HTML. So it was kind of like, okay, that'll kind of give me a good start on writing some code. And so I took those courses and I really started enjoying them. And I discovered another site back in like 2007 called eclasses.org. And that offered up a whole other list of courses that I could take. So I kind of went a little bit overboard in those 3 years. I think I took like something like 19 courses between Passaic County Community College, and those were online courses they offered, and the eclasses.org. I wasn't so far out of college at that time. They did have the eClasses had a syllabus. They were like 4 to 6 weeks each. They had quizzes, projects, books you could get and read. So like reading assignments. They had instructors to answer questions, and had other students that you could kind of have conversations with about the subject matter. Excuse me. Prices weren't that bad either. They had like a Webmasters Association along with it. I think it was like $40 a year for that. And when you joined that, each course was under $100 a course. So around 2008, I applied to a ton of jobs. At that point, I had taken a bunch of courses. I was feeling a bit more confident in some of the web skills. But as I applied to jobs, I didn't really hear back from many. And when I did, I would follow up and I wouldn't even hear back from that. And it was getting a little, I was getting a little anxious about it. And this was a tough time when I was trying to look for jobs. I remember one particular thing when I went to like one of those hiring agencies, and I met with a person there, and they I think it was for like getting into some PHP roles. They sat me down at a computer and they're like, okay, take this quiz on PHP, and then we'll leave you here to take that quiz, and when you're done, we'll kind of see how you did on the quiz, and then interview you to see where we can place you. And I think at that point I took like maybe one PHP course, and it was like question after question I was getting wrong. And I think I like at one point after like 4 or 5 questions, I packed up my stuff and walked out, and feeling very much like a failure. And it kind of hit me hard. But I realized at that point I really had a lot of I was starting to like get a lot of broad knowledge, so a little bit of everything, but wasn't deep knowledge in really anything. And also with the job situation, it was hard because at that point I'd been a copywriter for quite a number of years. So my resume looked great as a copywriter, but not so great as someone that wanted to be a web developer. Even when I reworked my resume to highlight freelance work and classes and projects that I was building, it was still a really hard sell. That same year, in 2008, I discovered meetups. And I really think that discovering meetups was a real breaking point for me. And it was kind of the missing piece in my journey of moving to be doing web development full time. I met a lot of people from those first meetup groups that I went to in the Panera Bread in Fairfield. If any of you had gone to there before, that was the first group I joined in 2008 and continued to go to for a good couple of years after the fact. But a lot of people I met there became really good friends of mine. Some of them are part of this meetup. I communicate with those people quite often still. And it was really in addition to like the classes and such, it was one of the missing pieces that I realized. I needed feedback, and I needed support, and I needed encouragement, and I needed people to root for me, and to have conversations with me about these things. Like I'd show them some work I was working on, and I'd get some feedback, and I'd take that back with me and apply it, and then we'd talk more about it. And those people that were, farther along in their career than myself, the career I was trying to break into, saw that I was learning and that I was worth supporting. And in late 2009, I got my first job. It was exciting. It was scary. It made me want to vomit. It's important to note that I had applied to this job a year before I got it. So I made some contacts from I think it was like LiveJournal, of someone that worked at this company called KickApps. That was the name of the company that I worked for. And there was a job that was posted that was beyond my ability. And it was clear. It was pretty clear right from the get-go. But I kept that contact. We spoke a few times. And then when a job opened up that was more suited to my skills, for instance, the job that I got was CSS focused. And at that point, I had been doing CSS for a few years, and it was probably the top skill I had. Between the contacts at the company from having applied before, all the contacts I made at Meetup, those people that I befriended at Meetup and helped me, helped me and encouraged me were my references. So I was able to list them as references on my resume, and that put it over the edge, and I was able to get that job. And the job was a really great fit. It was just challenging enough, but it wasn't over my head. The end. No, I'm just kidding. It's not the end. This is where it kind of gets more interesting. This is where it gets I started this in this journey in earnest in 2006, and I didn't get that first job until late 2009. I think it's important to note at that time, I was 30 years old. I was married. I owned a home. At that copywriter job, I was a senior copywriter, and I was leaving the job of a senior copywriter to be a mostly junior web developer. Until that point, I worked in New Jersey, and this job was in New York City. So that was something that scared the crap out of me as well. And I joined a startup called KickApps. So that could have went badly, but but to be honest, between 2009 and 2011, I learned more in 3 months at KickApps than I did in the 3 years leading up to it. There's lots of talented folks there doing that job day in and day out. Really helped me hone the skills. This was also outside of where I originally had, where I was networking with people in Meetup. This job was a new place to start networking with not only people that were developers, but also people in sales and everything else you need in a company, all the business, the C-level people, et cetera. But it was a great, I think it was like a year and a half that I was there. And it was good that I made all those networking connections, because one of them helped me get my second job. So my first job was, getting my foot in the door and trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. So I was working for KickApps was a software as a service company, and I was working on client implementations. So I was doing, client work, like agency-like work. For my second job, I wanted to do product work. I actually wanted to work on the product. So if you're a software as a service, actually working on that software. So my second job gave me that opportunity. And that was through someone I had worked with at KickApps who left the company and got a job at this basically almost brand new startup. Um, I was employee number 20. So this was very much a startup. Um, I had a senior level title, though honestly, I was not senior level, not at that point. Um, there was more money, there was more stress, there was much longer hours. I learned a ton of things there as well. Also, the thing about startups, especially as you are getting older, it does take its toll on you and your family because I swear to God, there was a couple of days I clocked 20 hours and slept in the office and just got up again and started working when you're working on a product launch. So those are always things to keep in mind. And also, like startups, they are very volatile. So in 2012, I lost my job. The company had to make some cuts. They did not get all the funding they needed in order to keep us all on. It did hit me hard. They cut. I wasn't the only developer they cut, but they did keep a bunch of developers too. But I was one of the ones that didn't make the cut. And it was tough. For anybody that had lost a job before, you know that feeling. At that time, I had been also interested in WordPress. I probably started having an interest in WordPress like late into my KickApps years. But I was doing that when I was still doing some freelance stuff. A lot of it was done in WordPress. And so after I got let go from this job, I started thinking like maybe I should, start doing more WordPress work. And it turned out that a person that I was connected with in Meetup was also someone that was connected with someone that I was connected with in KickApps. We all knew that. And I was at this friend's house, this friend from Meetup's house, feeling sorry for myself and hanging out in his garage with him as he worked. And he saw that this mutual friend of ours had a WordPress developer job somebody was looking for. And my friend's like, "Oh, did you consider Mike for this?" And he's like, "Oh no, Mike's working for that other company." And no, he's not. He's hanging out with me in my garage. He's looking to do WordPress work. So I went on that interview, and my interest in WordPress, my already experience, especially at that point, I was a lot stronger in JavaScript, and they were looking for a lot of JavaScript work within WordPress. That helped me get that job. And this is kind of where I'm going to leave it with where I went, because I did get another job after this, doing more WordPress work, very similar to what I was doing. It had some subtle changes of things I wanted to see in my career that I was looking for, but for the most part, I've been sticking with WordPress technology for the past 8 years. But this brings up kind of the question, so how do you become a web developer? And I'm not going to lie, because I went through this story, and even just going through this, it was pretty clear that there was a lot of opportunity that presented itself to me, especially being in a male-dominant career, being a white male, and that gives it a certain level of privilege there. The other parts that I want to point out was that early interest in computers. My parents had a computer for me to futz around with, even if I was only writing programs with go-to statements. And also, I was at the right age when the internet hit critical mass. We got the internet when I was like 15 or 16 years old. So it was kind of perfect timing for me to kind of be screwing around on GeoCities and building little websites and being able to do that. But when talking about going back to those 10,000 hours of greatness and, actually acquiring those skills and spending the time and spending that time wisely to learn. These are the things that kind of really stand out to me. And they're basically the things that work for me. And maybe they'll work for you, or maybe something similarly applied will work for you. So the first thing that stands out to me is something you're doing right now, and that's attending meetups. I think, especially at the time when I discovered meetups and started going to them, that was a real critical piece. I was learning a lot. I needed to socialize with people in order to help me get over that hump, get the encouragement, get that constructive feedback, and develop those relationships. And that really helped me personally, and maybe it would help you as well. Other ways to pursue this is, online, through blogs, through Twitter, etc. And I think it's not so much and presentations and help desks are great, but making those personal connections with people that are doing the things that you wished you were doing, and kind of picking their brain. And that kind of brings me to the next thing, is like asking questions and asking for feedback. So when you do meet those people, it's important to, show them where you are, what you've worked on, what you've done, what you're interested in, what you like. Having a lot of people that I know that I do WordPress. So if they have, WordPress work, they'll usually come to me because I made it clear that that's what I do. Making it clear what you want to do, I think is important. And also it's important to be clear what you want to learn, and get that feedback from people. When you're looking for people, it's good to eventually find a mentor. So someone that you have a really strong connection with, someone that, that you could talk, to personally, to help you on that journey of going from where you are now to the next thing. I had a mentor. I've had people that I would consider maybe loosely mentors, and I have a mentor now to help me move forward in my career. It's always a good thing to have. And when you're looking for advice or how to move in your career, and also to be that cheerleader and be that reference that you need in order to make the steps you need to make. Never ever stop learning. So I mentioned I took like 19 courses, and I said I may have overdid it a bit. I'm still taking courses. I'm taking a React course right now. You can't, if you plan on learning something and stopping and doing a job, this is really not the job for you, because the web is ever changing. There's new technologies. You gotta keep up with it. And a lot of it could be courses. Some people don't have time for that, or it doesn't work for them. You can read lots of books though, or you can read lots of articles. I personally like also to read lots of code. Just like the best writers are readers, the same thing applies to programmers. The best programmers read a lot of code. You should read WordPress code if you're working in WordPress, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's all there in WordPress core. Contribute to an open source project. That's a great way to meet people and start honing your skills and learning to work as a team. Usually you'll need to have some skills to get started there, but when you do get there, that's a great way to continue to learn. You could also start your own pet project, and I've done this a bunch of times, where you have some project you're interested in doing, and you know how to do most of it, or maybe like 70 or 80% of it, and then the other 20% is going to be a real challenge for you, but it's something that you feel that's attainable, something you can learn as you're working on it. I've done that a bunch of times and found I've really leveled up my skills by doing that. I mentioned eclasses.org, that I took a bunch of courses there. They are still around. I don't know if I'd recommend them anymore, but these are some things I would recommend. Udemy.com I'm taking courses at udemy.com right now, and I find them to be very high quality. Egghead.io was another one that was considered. And when I say that is that these classes I'm taking with a few people that I work with, and we kind of formed a study group, and we were basically between Udemy and egghead.io. We ended up with going Udemy. They seemed like they were a little bit better quality, but you might find egghead.io, egghead.io to be a little bit better for your needs. Lynda.com I've taken, which is now LinkedIn Learning. But lynda.com I've taken courses at a number of years ago. I found them to be high quality. Code Academy I've never taken any courses with, but I know that they're pretty popular, and I know that people have said good things about them. And Stack Overflow is not really a place to take classes, but you will find a lot of answers to your questions there. In fact, if you Google something of some programming issue you're having, I would say 99.9% of the time, the first link will be something on Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is a great archive of issues that programmers and developers have run into, and people in the community have answered those questions. And you'll see that it's common for people to vote up the best answers that come out of Stack Overflow. So if you're just starting off with being a developer, Stack Overflow is a very great resource for you to consider. That's basically my presentation. Again, my name is Mike Auteri. I'm a senior software engineer at Penske Media Corporation. We're basically the parent company of sites like rollingstone.com, variety.com, deadline.com, IndieWire.com, and about 15 other sites. So I get to work on those sites every day, which is very enjoyable. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at @mauteri. And with that, I will take questions.
So there are no questions in the Q&A.
I see chat. There's no questions. Does anybody have any questions to put in the Q&A? No? It's okay if you don't have any questions.
So I'd like to back up a few things Mike said. It's not often that it's not what you know sometimes. I mean, that matters, but it's about who you know. And so it's very important to go to industry events, go to WordCamps, go to meetups, go to conferences, go to conferences that are even tangentially related to what you're doing, and talk to people, meet people, get connections, follow up, follow them on Twitter, follow them on Instagram, read their blog, email them, ask them questions, basically get on their radar about what you're doing or what you want to do. And more than likely, someone's going to step up and help you out, make the connection that you need to get to your next step.
You'll also find that, and I was amazed by this, especially in the WordPress community, is that many people that are held in very high regard, people that present like very interesting talks and contribute to WordPress core, and you swear like have a degree in computer science, are not. A lot of them are in their second career, which I found fascinating. People that were accountants before they discovered programming, a lot of times through WordPress, or musicians, or God knows. I've heard some real fun ones, but the WordPress community in particular is made up of people from all walks of life, all different paths, and I think a lot of that has contributed to the quality of the software and the quality of the community. That you don't just have like a whole bunch of programmers trying to build a CMS. You have people that come from fine arts that discovered WordPress, or from some other career, and they bring the years of experience they had prior to that and apply it. So there, especially if you talk to a lot of people, you start discovering that a lot of people have similar stories of how they got to where they did. And, you should never get discouraged by it. And I'm convinced that's never too late to make a move like this. and you just got to remember that, as long as you're passionate about it and you're dedicated to it, you could take as much time as you want. Like, it took me a bunch of years to get ready. I've seen people take less years and I've seen people take more years. It's all about where your comfort levels are and how you feel with your skill sets and your networking and just life in general. So those are some of the things I just want to kind of, oh yes, thoughts on boot camps. So I don't really have a lot of, I'm reading the chat. I'm seeing that things are coming in now. Cam, looks like there's some stuff in the Q&A too.
There are.
All right, so I'm going to go through some of these. So my thoughts on boot camp. So I know some people have sworn by them, and some people think of them as like almost like I don't want to say a scam, but like they overpromise and underdeliver. And I'm also convinced that you get out what you put in. I think that's a piece of it. That's me saying it from someone that hasn't taken a boot camp. I know a woman who's a wife of a good friend of mine who I met through a meetup. She had a different career, and she was let go, and she had been talking for a while that she wanted to pursue development. And I think it was his birthday, and we were chatting about it. And she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do boot camp." And she did it. She did boot camp. It took her a little while to get a job. I think it took her like 6 months to a year, but she got that job, and she's been doing it ever since and loving it. So I've seen it work for some people. I've seen stuff on Twitter where people either say it's not worth it. I would say like look at what the price tag is and see if it's something you could swing. But I also think that a lot of online courses, if you're pretty self-disciplined and you can work through those things, you can get a lot of the same knowledge too.
So Carolyn asked, when is the next WordPress camp or the next WordCamp? Most of them are virtual now. However, there's a few stragglers still holding in-person events. If you go to central.wordcamp.org, you'll see the list of upcoming WordCamps right there.
Yeah, we were planning WordCamp Montclair, New Jersey, which had to be canceled, unfortunately. We're not sure when it's coming back. We're not sure if it'll be 2021 or 2022. We're the planning committee for that. We'll probably figure it out in December or January, whether we think it's a good idea or not, but we will find out. What else we got as far as, what sort of things does an entry-level web developer do day to day? Is working as a web developer that different from your experience of learning to code and work on a project? So entry level, usually you get started off with smaller tasks and you work your way up, depending upon where they kind of gauge where you are and what languages you seem to kind of work well in. Typically when we have entry level developers join our team, we kind of start them off kind of small, give them some tasks. A more senior person will kind of help them out, making sure that they're comfortable and learning. And we find that's a great way for people to kind of get the hang of things and then have greater tasks as they continue to learn.
Mike,
yeah.
The question from Jeff, there's a question in Q&A from Jeffrey Marbury.
Okay.
Do you want to read?
Yeah, here, I'll take a look at these now. All right, because I was looking at the chat and then, 1 second. Okay, on time as well. Quick question. And specific language focus on the backend development. So if you were to do WordPress, the language backend language I would say to learn is PHP for that. It really depends upon where you want to go. And it really doesn't matter what your first language is, in my opinion. When people ask me what's the hardest language, the answer is the first one. So a lot of programming languages are very similar to each other. Basically, you're just kind of figuring out syntax after that. The first language you learn kind of gives you the fundamental of programming. So if you were to learn JavaScript first, you would find that PHP is a lot easier. If you learn PHP first, you would find JavaScript's easier. And it really doesn't totally matter which one you learn first. But if you have kind of a thought of what you want to do, it'd probably be good to learn the language of the thing you want to do. Right now, a lot of boot camps and stuff will teach JavaScript because it's easier to learn, in the sense that the environments in which you can learn in can just be in a browser rather than trying to figure out how to compile code or set up a server or anything like that. So a lot of times people will kind of learn JavaScript, and there's a lot of jobs in JavaScript right now. Okay, I'm trying to transition from IBM iServices to WordPress. I have been involved in Lehigh Valley WordPress community since 2013. Any tips on getting the first WordPress job, even if it's just maintaining updates on sites for a company like WP Buffs or others like that? So first, I would say, building freelance websites in WordPress, I found was kind of a good kind of jump off point for me. And getting involved in the WordPress community, getting involved with parts of the open source project, even if you could find in core, good, I think it's good first, a good first ticket or something like that. They're usually small things. If you're just kind of starting out, you can, starting out to contribute, you can contribute to that. But I found a lot with the WordPress community in particular, it's pretty tight knit. And if you can kind of get to know some of the people in that community, jobs will really open up for you there. How would I get freelance work? So, Cameron, this one might be a good one for you to answer. You seem to get a lot more than I do.
Most of the freelance work I get is through word of mouth or referrals from existing clients. I've picked up a number of clients from the help desk meetups that we run. I also, it's important to build your brand and make a name for yourself in your local area for working with WordPress. And a number of clients I've picked up have come to me because they've seen that I've built WordPress sites for other organizations and school districts and companies in the area. It's really just a matter of networking, talking to people, letting people know that this is the work that you do, showing competency, and just following through and making sure you keep your clients happy, and not doing crappy work. You got to do pretty high quality work. It's difficult because some of my clients are very, very picky. And so keeping them happy is sometimes pretty difficult. I've actually fired a couple of clients recently because they're asking for too much for too little money. And I'm like, I can't do this $5,000 job for $1,500 bucks. I just can't do it. And so I'll sometimes refer those clients to other people. I won't mention names, but there's a few people in our community who I do feed some work to.
Finding a mentor, friends in tech industry has become really hard for me. Network ideas, websites, places to go, where to expose to people to involve in the tech industry. So I kind of go between extroverted and introverted depending upon my mood, or I'm not very extroverted and sometimes I get kind of introverted, especially in larger crowds. But I typically, for me, I know it's hard in the day of COVID, but before that, I would usually have one or two familiar faces, usually someone that's a bit more outgoing than me, that would introduce me to other people, like at WordCamps, at meetups, that sort of thing. It can be hard. It can be really scary. I know that like I've struggled with it. You know, like the first time I went to a meetup, like I'm like deer in headlights. I'm like walking into a Panera Bread and I didn't even know. I saw someone with a laptop, but that could have been someone else, not part of the meetup. But I guessed right. I'm like, is this a meetup? And you're like, yeah, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, but yeah, it was scary. It was hard, and a lot of it is kind of like consistency. It's like seeing the same people over and getting to know them little by little, and then also taking that relationship that you've kind of started in like in real life with someone, like online, like through Slack, through social media, follow them on Twitter, respond to tweets. You start seeing that you can start, you know, naturally developing friends, and those friends, if they are someone you look up to, someone that's in the right place, in a place that you wish to be in, that person could end up being either like a mentor or a mentor that can like help you kind of get through that.
Yep. So there's a couple more things I want to touch base on before we go to the next question. It's important that when you're starting to build your reputation for doing WordPress work, sometimes you do want to focus on a niche market. An example, I have two examples. One is myself, which I focus on school district websites and nonprofit websites. And I've become known in the area for doing that kind of work because I know the industries very well. Another example is a guy named David Wank, who spoke at our WordCamp last year. He's a dentist, but he basically builds websites and WordPress for other dentists. And he has built a niche in the area of just building WordPress websites for dentists. So it's kind of important to like figure out what you know, like what area, what industry do you know well? Do you know how it runs? Do you know how they do their finances? Do you know what their website needs? And then build on top of that knowledge and build, you know, websites that service that niche market in a very good way. It's important to think about that because building general kind of WordPress websites, if you don't know what their industry does or what the website should be, you have a steeper learning curve than building on top of knowledge you already have.
Cool. All right. So I see there's one, I see two questions, one in the Q&A and one in the chat. I'll do the Q&A one first, and then I'll do the one that's in the chat. What did you do if you're the mature WordPresser and need to build a network with those younger? So I assume that this question is about being kind of the more senior working with a junior. I mean, a lot of that, usually that is, that dynamic is a tech lead with someone that is on your team that you're working with. I try to like, when I'm working with people that are more junior to me and I'm the lead on a project, I usually kind of review architecture with them, and I try to let them own the project or own the code that they are working. I feel like that's a very good growing experience. But I do give a bit of oversight in the sense that I like to kind of run a discussion with them before you code. I mean, you should know what you're doing before you open your editor. You should, like, the coding is just the exercise. You should know what you're building before you go and do that. Not all developers follow that rule, but that's a good way to help someone that's more junior to start thinking about what they're building before they build it, and then asking questions about the way they want to build the thing that they want to build, or the way they want to do it, with questions that you feel that could that are good questions to ask for that particular thing, and let them think about that. And not so much giving how you would exactly do it. You might, depending upon how they want to go, you might use that as an option. But I try to allow a lot of developers to kind of find their way within, within reason, because, we have to get it done. We have to get it done right. But, I don't want them to be like a line cook. I want them to have some thought about how they're doing it, because I feel like that's a very important way to grow. I'm going to answer the question in chat from Steven. At work, you do work with WordPress VIP, or do you use standard WordPress.org? If so, is there a big difference between the two? I've been working with WordPress.org since, or I have been working with WordPress.org since 3.2, and I've never worked with VIP. Is there a big learning curve? So the important thing to know about VIP, and there's actually two types of VIPs. There's VIP Classic and VIP Go. VIP Classic is being phased out, and what that means is that's enterprise level hosting, but it was on WordPress.com. So it was actually part of that WordPress.com architecture, which meant that Automatic, the company behind WordPress.com, reviewed every line of code that you put on there, and if anything had any security issue or performance thing, they would kick it back to you to fix, because you could literally take down the whole network with some bad code there, and that would be really bad. VIP Go is their new service, which is virtual hosting. So that is, it's still on automatic servers. They're like virtual servers, but still like their stack. You won't be taking down WordPress.com or anybody else's site, so they still review your code, and that's one of the biggest things about VIP, is that they offer code reviews to make sure that you're not doing anything horrible, and you can learn a lot from the developers at Automatic.
So
the difference is
WordPress VIP is also very enterprise level, and you're going to spend minimum $5,000 a month or something like that. It's
astronomically expensive, but you get a lot for it. And they have a ton of events, and it's like a whole big thing for the enterprise level area. But I think as a developer, working in WordPress VIP probably accelerated a lot of what I know about WordPress because of those code reviews. I mentioned that, reading code is just as important as writing code, because a lot of times that's how you get better. You see how someone else's written code, you can you're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And now you know, because you read it. So, when someone's pointing out that knows a lot more about WordPress than you do, about, hey, that query isn't going to be performant and can take down your site because it's a very big site. You learn that fast, and you don't have to make that mistake because they pointed it out for you and, pointed you in a direction of how you can learn how to do it better. So I think that's kind of the big difference. There are some architectural differences. There is some black box stuff going behind WordPress VIP, but not much that you should be concerned about. Usually it revolves around caching or something like that. Cool. All right, let me see. Age-old question, recommendations for determined price for freelance work with limited experience, better to do case-by-case, flat rate, hourly. I typically do flat rate. When I do stuff now, I used to do, if budget's not an issue, I'll do hourly. If they're just just bill me whatever, I'm like, okay, cool, hourly, let's do it, but in most cases that is, I'll try to do a flat rate, but when I do a flat rate, make sure you do your homework and you spend the time to set what the scope of the project is, and break it up into smaller tasks. And then think about how long it's going to take you to do those smaller tasks. And if it helps you to apply hours to doing those smaller tasks to help you come up with the budget of it, that's even better. It might want to add some padding to it for any scope creep or any small asks that are out of scope that you don't really necessarily want to say no to. But it's hard, and you're going to mess it up, at least the first few times. But you'll get better at coming up with how much it costs to do a thing on a flat rate as you continue to do it. I actually meant mature as an age. Oh, yeah, that would make sense. but answer was good. So yeah, age-wise too. I mean, even at like, because I'm 41 now, and a lot of people that I work with, uh, even like now, it's like, well, in the startups, it was like early 20s. In publishing, where I'm in now, like WordPress publishing, I would say the mean age is like 32. Uh, but I mean, it's the age thing is it really doesn't play that much after you've been there a while. I guess starting out, like even that wasn't. I mean, I guess I looked kind of young, but I was only. I mean, 30 seemed like kind of old then. It really doesn't seem that old now. But I guess it was kind of like to be a junior level. It is, it was, my manager is younger than me, uh, and that's okay. Um, but it's I don't really see the age thing as like with a coworker thing as being a big deal. It was more like getting over the hump of like trying to like move into a different career and having those like trying to like start something I wasn't super comfortable with kind of all the weight of adulthood, like having like owning a home and having a wife and now I have a kid too on top of it. So it's like all that juggling act. You may have already stated this, but uh,
Change.
what would you
Change.
change about your journey if you could? What would you tell your younger self? And that's a good question. That's a really good question because I have thought about this a lot. I think uh, like I didn't know imposter syndrome was a thing back then. And I really, really like it's talked about a lot now. But back then it really wasn't. And a lot of people suffered from it. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's like especially if you came from a separate career, it's like you feel like you don't really know anything and that you're like, faking it. And a lot of programmers and developers suffer from that. Um, but I think it's important. It would have been important for me to tell myself that, you're good at what you do at the level you're at. Um, you know, make those. I wish I discovered Meetup faster, and I wish I trusted my skills earlier. Um, like I felt like it took me longer than it should have to move from one job to another, but um, you know, it's all part of the journey too, and it's everybody goes at their own pace and their own comfort level. But I wish I was a little less scared of it and kind of tackled it earlier. I guess that's what I would tell myself, that it's okay to like really, trust your skills and move forward. How do you get a client to give you a workable scope instead of having to chase them down for requirements? Um, if you figure that out, you could let me know because I'm still chasing
I
people
think
down for requirements.
oftentimes the client doesn't know how to define requirements. So
Mhm.
you sometimes have to just do a lot of discovery meetings with them,
Yeah.
and definitely bill for your time when you do that, and make sure the client understands it's part of the project, that doing discovery on their project is part of the job. It's not something that they get for free, because you're helping them put into words what they're thinking and what they want, because they don't know how to articulate it unless you guide them. So make sure you budget for discovery meetings. Make sure that you understand how to turn what you learn in discovery into an actionable project plan. So it would help for anybody who's never taken project management courses to sign up for a couple of those classes from Linda or Udemy or any one of those online services that has classes. Project management is it's actually very good to know project management and know how to manage a project. because a
Yep.
lot of the times you'll come into a team and there's not a good competent project manager, and it's just an absolute mess, an absolute nightmare, and you have to figure out what your role is on that team because the project manager hasn't scoped it out properly.
I've
So
worked at companies that both had great project management and terrible project management, and I can tell you that my life is a million times better when we have great project management. And you think that you like it's an oversight or it's not that important that like, we just gotta, we're coding by the seat of our pants. We're just constantly you're just putting out fires at that point. You don't have like a structure for getting software out, and it's usually low quality if you don't have a good plan. Um, Jeffrey asks, what about someone who likes to program but is not super artistic? Is there room for someone like that in the WordPress community? And the answer is absolutely. There is so much logic behind the code that you don't need to be artistic. There are lots of designers in the WordPress community that focus on design. There are a lot of programmers that focus on all sorts of stuff, from performance to security to just user interfaces, and working. I'm myself am not terribly artistic. I'm like not great, but I'm not I'm not terrible, but I'm definitely not great. But the trick for that is to make, like, I like to work with like good designers, and with tools like, if you ever heard of like InVision, or there's a couple other ones, XD from Adobe, but InVision is the one I use a lot. It's a great way to work with another designer, or a way a designer can translate their designs to a programmer. It's a great tool for that. Which tools do you use for project management? I swear by Jira. We use Jira like it's going out of style. We use Jira for everything. And
for smaller teams, Basecamp is pretty good. There's actually a couple of WordPress plugins that are considered project management plugins that offer a free and then a freemium version. Take a look at those.
ZenHub is another one if you're using GitHub and you just want to keep it
Trello,
light. Trello is another one.
Trello. There's a couple different. There's a lot of SaaS products, software as a service model products that are project management focused. We mentioned a couple of them.
Cool. I'm going to read one from one of the chat. Like, how did your mental health affect or be affected by starting this career later in life? And it was exciting and nerve-wracking. I mean, at that point, I really, really hated my previous job. So even on my worst days at my new job, it felt better than my best days at my old job, if that makes sense. The mental health on my second dev job, it took a bigger toll on me. It was I was like being worked to death, and I had anxiety and I had trouble sleeping. And it really kind of pointed out, or like I kind of realized, I'm like, startups are a lot of fun. There's a lot of interesting people you work with. It's very fast paced. It's very volatile. But it's not for everybody. And it's important when you're interviewing for a job that the type of culture and environment you're getting yourself into. That second job, if I didn't get let go, I probably wouldn't have lasted much longer because I was being burnt out real bad. And working in publishing, it's a lot smoother. It works better with my life. So it's, when you're on those interviews, it's important to know the kind of culture that you are entering if you choose to join that company. Cool. I've built 2 sites on WordPress using their templates, and I'm being approached to build a third one. I have no coding knowledge and feel that I need to step up my game. Where do I begin to learn a new language, and any preference? So awesome for you. Like that's exactly kind of where I was when I kind of started this journey. Those depending upon it really depends upon how you learn, like and what kind of works for you. So I found online courses like on Udemy, I think would be a good place to start. Taking some of those courses. They can run anywhere if they're having sales. I got one for like $10, but it was like normally 50, but it was like 10. So I'm taking that one. The React one I think was like 120. And that React one is like, it's going to take me probably like 3 months to get through that. It's a lot of material. But there's lots of courses. There's ones in WordPress. Uh, you know, uh, pick our brains at Meetup, especially when we get back to doing it like in real life. um, you know, uh, it's if WordPress is the place you kind of want to pursue, learning, how WordPress works. If you're interested in the back end of WordPress, PHP is definitely a good language to learn. WordPress is also more heavily reliant on JavaScript. So that's another good one to learn. They all kind of go together. So like a lot of people that know PHP also know a bit about WordPress or a bit about JavaScript, a bit about CSS. And they all kind of, when you're working on something, you kind of work with all them sort of together if you're working on like more of a freelance full stack sort of thing. But don't get discouraged by it. Everybody learns at their own pace. Everybody has a certain amount of time to dedicate to it. If you really care about it and you want to stick with it, those resources, our meetup, that's the Slack channel of our meetup, WordCamps. There's at this time especially, there's so many areas that you can meet new people, work on new projects. There is a lot more out there today to help you with learning this stuff. Let me see. Okay. Projects that I should have in my portfolio to showcase my skills as a self-taught SWE. Also, my skills to have for Java developer. I don't know Java, so I can't really, I guess, speak to that. Cameron, do you know, am I stupid? Do I know what SWE is?
Um,
Oh, JavaScript. Okay.
I don't know what SWE is.
What's SWE? Just humor me.
Software enterprise? I don't know. Software engineer?
Software engineer. Okay, software engineer. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. I've never seen it written that way. That's cool. A self-taught software engineer. I mean, your portfolio should represent things that you're proud of, something that you can speak in depth to when someone asks about it. So, knowing the challenges that you faced while you're working on that, in order to overcome it. Part of being a software engineer is like knowing how a person approaches a problem, and if you have a good piece in your portfolio that showcases that, that's a great a good piece to have, because the idea is that your portfolio should, start a conversation. So when someone says, "Oh, tell me about this," you should have something really great to say about it that showcases something that will help you get your next job. And as far as JavaScript, getting up to date with like ES6 or ES Next or whatever they call it, like kind of the cutting edge JavaScript, is if you're like, that should be something that you should absolutely be pursuing. Learn some of I would choose for like, as far as frameworks, React or Vue. WordPress kind of leans more towards React because it's in WordPress core and it powers the block editor. Vue is, people swear by it. that one too. So that's another good one. Probably doesn't hurt to know jQuery still. There's still a lot of that going around, and you're probably going to have to touch it if you're a JavaScript developer. So having like a basic understanding how jQuery works. If you know CSS and you know JavaScript, jQuery should be pretty straightforward. Cool. Does anybody else have any questions before we depart? These are a lot of great questions. I appreciate all this, and thanks everybody for attending. You know, this was a pretty it was a pretty personal talk for me. Most of my talks are usually around tech, so talking about all this stuff is brand new for me. So I appreciate it. Oh, project management plugins for WordPress.
Yeah,
Cameron, I think you mentioned one, right?
I already answered in chat. You need to go to the answered questions.
Oh, okay.
I don't know off the top of my head the names of them, but there's a couple.
Yeah.
One of them's tied to WP CRM or something like that. It's like, it's okay. It does an okay job for being free, but it's not perfect. So
yeah,
it really depends on what kind of project management you're doing. Like if you can map your project management to the way that particular developer thinks about project management, then it'll work for you. But as soon as you deviate from that at all, you're kind of stuck. And so what I like about some of the software as a service versions like Basecamp or Jira is that they're open and flexible enough that you can map your project management guidelines, your project management process in any way you want without being hamstrung by how a plugin wants to do something.
Okay, cool. So the last, thanks for that, Cameron. The last question of the night, where can I find a copy of tonight's recording? This is Pam Unk's account, but this was a recorded session. It's actually still recording, and I'll stop it in a minute. But she will, I'll ping her after this, and she'll send me the link, and then I will post it both in Slack, and I will post it as a comment on tonight's meetup for anybody. So you should get a notification from one of those, and then you can, keep that link forever and ever and watch it whenever you like. You bet. I appreciate everybody. Thanks you all for coming. I hope you got something out of this and I helped you move forward. And of course, let myself, Cameron, Jason, anybody that you want to talk to in the group, let us know how we can help you. If you're looking to become a developer, we're rooting for you. So cool. Have a great night, everybody, and thank you.